Hello and welcome back to the Dynamic CRM Trick Bag. I'm Richard Knudson and I'm the president of IMG. We're a Chicago-based firm that provides consulting and learning solutions for Dynamic CRM. Now in this edition of the Trick Bag, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite new features in the area of entity relationships in Dynamic CRM 4.0, so-called many-to-many relationships between entities. Now the Dynamic CRM 3.0 version had some really nice baseline features that a developer or a power user could use to create custom relational database applications. But the 4.0 version extends those capabilities in some really important ways. In other sessions, I've talked about the importance of self-referential and system-to-system relationships. So here, I'll round out this little trilogy with a brief discussion of many-to-many relationships. So, why should you care about this? What can you use it for? Well, as with the other improvements, it turns out that many-to-many relationships model some important real-world business situations. And the new feature that I'll show you next makes it much easier to support these in 4.0 than the previous version. For example, in a healthcare scenario, you might have a doctor, certainly might have many patients, but there's no reason a patient couldn't be associated with more than one doctor. Sales marketing example, suppose I want to keep track of my customers' interests for marketing purposes. Well, one contact would certainly want to be able to have multiple interests, and the same interest, certainly you'd probably want that to be shared by multiple contacts. So let me show you how you can implement this using the native many-to-many relationships feature in Dynamic CRM 4.0. Okay, so let's take a look at how to implement this in Dynamic CRM 4.0. First of all, I'll navigate to Sales, and I'll open up a contact record and show you what might be an initial approach at this, but turns out not to work so well. What I'm looking at here is a slightly modified, slightly customized contact form, and you'll see here that I have a pick list for interest areas. So for example, if I wanted to keep track which of my contacts were interested in Dynamic CRM, SharePoint, or anything else, you might think that would work. I can select a value of Dynamic CRM for one contact and a value of SharePoint for another contact, and I could certainly generate marketing lists on that basis. But if you think about it a minute, the obvious problem with that approach will be that one contact, since this is a pick list, can only have one interest area. So let's take a different approach. What I'll do is I'm going to go and point out that I've gotten a bit of a head start by creating a custom entity called interests. And this is a pretty simple entity. It just really has one thing that I enter into it. So Dynamics, CRM, and SharePoint are a couple of the values that I have in here now. But as it stands in this implementation, there's no relationship between contact and interests here, so I wouldn't be able to keep track of which of my contacts are interested in those different interest areas. So what I'm going to do is customize the contact entity and create that many-to-many relationship between contact and interest area. You'll see how easy it is to do this, and then I'll spend a couple minutes showing you some of the benefits once you get this done. So here we see this new many-to-many relationships feature that's exposed here in the customization user interface. That was not available in Dynamic CRM 3. And I'll simply click New Many-to-Many Relationship. And since I start with the contact entity, it'll give me that here up in the current entity section, and in the other entity section I want to select interest. And what you'll see in the display option is that these are how we will refer to these entities within this relationship. And I'll show you in a minute why I want to refer to contacts as contacts with interest, but that for the interest entity I'll simply use the plural name. Does that's all I need to do really to create this many-to-many relationship. Let's accept the defaults for everything else. So we're going to have a many-to-many relationship here between contact and interest. So now the relationship is created, and I'll go ahead and publish those changes. And once those changes are published, these customizations are published, I'll navigate to the sales area, and now I'll open up our contact form again, and we'll go ahead and open up a contact form. And now you see that I have in the details section, I've got exposed this interests, and what I can do for each contact is go select one now or more, importantly, of those different interest areas to attach to the contact record. So for example, for that first record for Adrian, I'll indicate that he's interested in both Dynamic CRM and SharePoint. And for Darius, I'll pop open his contact record, indicate one area of interest. Darius will be interested in, say, CRM only. We'll save and close, and we'll round this out by selecting the third record. Will be noted as being interested in SharePoint only. So we'll go ahead and do that. So I have one of these contacts who's got both, one who has Dynamic CRM only and one who has SharePoint. Let's look at the interests entity and pop open one of the interest forms, and you'll see this relationship from the other side. Now you'll see why in the display name I want it to refer to contact as contacts with interest. It's just a little bit more clear in this context that when we're looking at the interest here, instead of just saying contacts here, which was the default, you can see that Adrian and Darius have an interest in Dynamic CRM. If I go to SharePoint, I'll see two people here, but in this case it'll be Adrian and Mike Miller. Now, what do we do with this? Well, let me show you a good application of this. I can create marketing lists, and I'll create two marketing lists, and I'll create one list that says contacts interested in SharePoint, and the member type is going to be a contact, and that's all that's required. I'll just shortcut this and use required fields only there. And now I need to add marketing list members to this marketing list. So I click marketing list members, choose manage members, and I'm going to use advanced find to add members to this list. So we'll go ahead and do that. And in the advanced find user interface, contacts will be pre-selected. It's the only record type that will be in this list. And I could choose to query on fields from the contact record, or I could take advantage of the fact that CRM lets me use query fields from related entities for my query as well. And in particular, what I want to select here is interests. So I'll say interests and then select name, which is the field, the only field really that I have in that interest table, equal. So now I've got a nice well-defined marketing list for SharePoint, and now I'll make one more marketing list. I have two nice marketing lists that I can use and refresh as necessary, so that as my contact database grows and as different interests that people are interested in are updated, those marketing lists will always update. So that's a pretty good example, I think, in the real world of how you might take advantage of the native many-to-many relationship, and importantly how much easier it is. You'd have to do a fair amount of work in Dynamic CRM 3 to get that to work. So again, Richard Knudson here, the Dynamic CRM Trick Bag, and I hope you found this helpful and interesting.